So good morning, everyone. It is so good to have the opportunity to take over for Chris Stewart. Those are big shoes to fill. If you all don't know me, I am Naomi Shelton. I am an education advocate, an education equity advocate. Have spent the last, I'd say, at this point now, 9 years, really thinking about how do we talk about, do the work, and really to try to shift what's happening in the education landscape. And so today we are joined by three amazing young people. And I hate saying that because I feel like I'm still young, so I shouldn't talk about them that way. So we have a great panel of folks here today to talk about a couple of things that have been happening and percolating in the education space. So we have three amazing alums from various KIPP schools here in the country. So I'm going to give a couple of moments away to them for them to introduce themselves really quickly. And then we're going to dive into, again, something that's been percolating, but who better to hear from than actual alums of KIPP? So I'm going to start from my right, and that would be Raquel. Raquel, if you could introduce yourself really quickly.
Hey everyone, Raquel Crutcher. I'm currently in New York City, but I'm a KIPP alum from Memphis, Tennessee. I work in education policy, and I know the other people here and excited to talk with them.
Awesome. And who you want to kick it to, Raquel?
Okay, I'll kick it to Nathan.
Hi, everybody. My name is Nathan Woods. I'm a KIPP DC alum. I currently work as a senior manager for community relations at KIPP DC. And I've been in education. Well, I've been fighting for educational justice all my life. But I have been in the space teaching and in an administrative role for going on 6 years now.
Awesome. And last but not least.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Dolores Lozano. I am from KIPP, Texas. I went to a KIPP school here in Houston, Texas. I currently work for one of the largest community development organizations in Texas called Baker Ripley. Really excited to join the conversation with my fellow alumni.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you all. And I love that y'all were semi-modest about all the things you have done and what you do. I understand that. And I will say, just to be open and transparent, I am the Director of Community Engagement for the KIPP Foundation. This is a brand new role. I'm now a year and a couple of months into this role. And the reason that I have this position is the organization really started to do some deep diving around 2 years ago to think about how we should be thinking forward in our work, and recognize that they had not done the most amazing job in connecting to the community that they serve. And so to ensure that we're doing that in a more thoughtful way, not only at the national level, but also at the local level, my role, which sits within the policy and public affairs team. My team specifically is PACE, which is policy, advocacy, and community engagement. We thought it important to really think about how do you connect federal policy to the local landscape, and thinking through that, how do you make sure that we're doing family engagement and also community engagement in a really thoughtful way. And so this isn't something that we're doing as a knee-jerk reaction to all that's happening and the racial reckoning that's going on in the country at the moment. This is something we've been thinking through and really pondering over for quite some time. So today we're going to have a really robust conversation around policy, around local just engagement and what that looks like. We're going to talk about like what KIPP and other organizations should be thinking about to best serve not only their current students and families, but the alums that they have. And on top of that, how they should be connecting to other organizations to be thoughtful as we walk through how to improve education. So the first question I'm just going to throw out to you all, and however you want to bounce this around, feel free. How are you taking care of yourselves in all that 2020? So of course the pandemic, but on top of the pandemic, all the other things that are going on in the world. How are you taking care of yourselves? Anybody?
We can start with you, Raquel.
I was going to say, I'll start. I'm not sure I'm doing a good job, but I'm not doing the best job, but I think for me, the first step in taking care of myself has been just letting myself not be okay every now and then, and just saying, hey, I could be doing a little better, but I'm gonna do the best that I can right now. And whenever I feel like I need something, just like meditation and exercise are my two go-tos. But honestly, just making sure like I let myself be a mess sometimes has been my like go-to. But
Got it.
That's kind of been my go-to as well, Raquel. Just let myself be a mess. It's okay. But also, music is really helping me through a lot of this. Music is helping me stay focused. It's helping me plan for the future. And it's helping to strengthen my resolve and fighting for my kids and my family and the community every day. But
What are you
I give
listening
myself
to?
some time. So I'm a Brandy stan. That new B7 album is beautiful. Like it's phenomenal. But like, let's talk about how great R&B has been this
Yeah.
year. If nothing else, R&B, the women and the men have been showing out. So just a quick plug to the R&B, and if you want any music recommendations, hit me up.
We'll do that at the end. I'll throw out a random question for you at the end. So, Lord,
Okay.
you're taking care of yourself.
A
Down
segue
there in
off
the great state of Texas.
a segue off of that, I've definitely been binge watching Moesha on Netflix, so I'm so glad the show is on there. I recently purchased, my partner and I recently purchased bikes. So if it's not going for a walk in the morning, we'll take a bike ride. And then just kind of reflecting, if it's been a hard day, like in politics or in the news, we'll have those uncomfortable conversations with friends, jump on Zoom, and just kind of talk our way through things. And like Raquel, I'm a mess. Every time someone asks me how am I doing, I'm like, I'm still trying to manage this COVID thing and get in a routine. Eventually, hopefully, we'll all get there.
Right. So to kick off this conversation, you have to start at the beginning. I love color and context. I think it's really important for people to have understanding of what, the origins of something, right? But to really quickly say, I hope all of you have watched what Beyonce bestowed upon us on July 31st at midnight. I hope everybody's had a chance to watch Black is King, because that has gotten me through this past weekend. This is something you do day by day. So just to go back and think about contextually, I would love to hear how you all ended up at KIPP. And Dolores, I'll start with you.
So I was, prior to KIPP, I was in a magnet program, and my mom was searching for a school that would best be suitable for my future. And it was actually another teacher's recommendation about the KIPP program. The KIPP school that I went to was KIPP 3D Academy, and they were about to go into their second year. And so it was quite the transition for me because I went to a pretty white, I was fortunate to get into a magnet program in a very affluent area. And it was just a transition to go and be back into my roots and also be connected with a lot of students like me. So I really enjoyed the transition to KIPP.
And I'll piggyback that. So when you all answer this, if you could to think about this as well. And now as an adult, how do you think about that decision? What are your thoughts around, because all of you all have stayed connected to KIPP in some way. Nathan is working for KIPP DC now. And if I'm not mistaken, Dolores, you serve on a board. How do you think about that in terms of if you had children, if you hadn't ended up at KIPP, what are your thoughts around that decision?
Okay, I'll go ahead and answer that. I think attending KIPP was one of the best experiences of my life, and it's really has changed the trajectory of my life. If it wasn't for KIPP, I wouldn't have went to such an amazing private school for high school, and I definitely don't think that I probably would have ended up in college or receiving a scholarship to college. And it's been great to pay it forward as a new member on the Texas board and really be the voice for alumni here in the state of Texas.
Awesome. Raquel?
For me, I think my mom was just gonna do what she needed to do by any means necessary for me to have a little bit better than I was having at the moment. So I was attending the public school that my family all went to, and we realized together that we wanted a change. So my mom and my sister literally went out and was seeking another school, and just ran across the principal of New KIPP Memphis School at a grocery store. And I think looking back, the education that I received at Diamond was a lot better than the one that I was going to receive, and my family knew that. And I don't know, I always respect a parent's decision to make a sacrifice for their kids' education. So I have nothing but love and respect for my mom for making that sacrifice. I genuinely have no idea what my experience would have been like otherwise because I only know mine, but I do know that the experience that I had definitely shaped where I am now. And so I'm grateful. I'm grateful for the decision, and I think like looking forward into my life and what I would do for my kids, I would do the same thing by any means necessary. I would go out in the city and I would figure out where is the best place for my kids to be, even if that meant a 30-minute drive. So that's how I ended up at KIPP, and I think, I don't know, I have no regrets. I respect my mom's decision there.
Awesome. And Nate.
I guess it's my go. So I just want to just go ahead and say I apologize to my sister for this, but the story starts with her. One of the founding teachers at KIPP DC, who became my godmother, became an amazing part of my life and my family's life. She was a founding teacher at KIPP DC, and she was teaching at a DC public school at first. But I remember one day she came to my mother's house and she said, "Ms. Woods, there's this new school that's coming to DC. We think it would be great for Erkia, who's my sister, to attend this school." The catch was my sister was going to the 6th grade, but KIPP only started in the 5th grade. So my mom had to make the tough decision to keep her in a school that wasn't really fitting her needs, or send her to a school that's really going to prepare her to be a responsible citizen in the world. So my mom and my sister made that tough decision. There were some tears, but it only made sense for me to attend KIPP the next year. I was going to middle school. So I entered into the 5th grade. And it changed my life. From the day that I walked into school, there was a question that the principal told us, and she asked us, and she's like, "What year do you go to college?" Right? I always knew I wanted to be a lawyer. I always knew I wanted to be successful. But in the neighborhood that I grew up in, I didn't see too many people who were successful. I didn't see too many people who were lawyers. So I didn't know what the formula was. I didn't know what it would take to become a lawyer. But one of the first things I heard was, "What year are you going to college?" And that was 2010. And that stuck with me ever since. But would I do the same thing for my kids? Absolutely. I will fight for my kids to get the education that they deserve. If they're not getting it one place, it's my choice as a parent to ensure that they are getting the best education wherever they go. So shout out to my mom, man. She's the strongest person I know. She had to make some tough decisions, but me and my siblings are better off because of it. And we're talking about generational change, right? Like my sister and I didn't just go there. My nieces and nephews still attend the school, right? So it's been a family for me. Since I stepped into the doors in 2002, I've been a part of KIPP, and they've embraced me as such.
And then really quickly to follow up, Nathan, what did you do? And this is a question for all of you. After you left KIPP, what did you do? And I find it interesting that each of you have had your hand in education in some way or remained connected to KIPP. So if you could talk a little bit more about what you did after college, and talk through that some more. And I'd love to hear how all of you all landed where you are now.
Yeah. So while I was in college, I did this amazing program called Literacy Corps. I was on campus at Syracuse, and I would get on the bus every single day to go into the local public schools and tutor. And just seeing the aha moments on all the kids' faces that I work with really made me passionate about this work, and also understanding that education was the key for me, right? Education got me all the way up here to one of the best universities in the country where I'm succeeding at. So why not do something like that? Why not continue to support and pull up other Black and brown babies who are just like me? So I decided to join Teach for America. I went down to San Antonio. Never in a million years thought I would end up in Texas. My mom was a little nervous about that, but I mean, it was the best experience of my life, and those babies changed my life. They made me a better man. They really made me have purpose. And I fight every day for them. You know, I fight every day for Madeline. I fight every day for, so many of my kids in San Antonio who work their tails off every single day. And they just graduated a couple of months ago. So I'm feeling a little old. I saw them in 7th grade. And then I taught them in 8th grade. Again, they just graduated from high school. But I had to come back home, right? I knew there was a lot of work that needed to be done in my community. And how can I be the example for the young kids that are coming up in Southeast DC? How do I raise and amplify my voice for those voices, that don't have the platform that I have, or don't sit in the rooms that I sit in? So I felt that the morally imperative that I come back and do work at KIPP DC and work every day at KIPP DC to make this organization better.
Dolores, what about you? Since since Nathan wanted to talk about Texas, what did you?
I love Texas. It's in my heart now.
Texas is a great place. Throughout my summers in college, I spent it at KIPP. I was volunteering, tutoring a lot of students in summer school. I think after graduation, I spent a period of my career in sports and entertainment. I was very fortunate to work for the Houston Super Bowl host committee when the Super Bowl was here just a few years back. And I was granted the opportunity to do a community engagement event and decided to bring it back to KIPP. So we did a 100-day countdown at a KIPP school. We brought in football players, local celebrities, and it was really nice to bring that opportunity to them to hear all of these incredible stories from the movers and shakers here in the city. And currently, right now, in my new role, just to be able to have a voice for our students and for our alumni on the KIPP Texas board, that's huge. That's making like Nathan was saying, just generational change, because for a lot of us, we are the first generation to go to college, first generation to do a lot of things. And so to kind of carry the torch and be a voice, it's very, very important. And it's very important to do it back home where you're from.
Thanks so much. Raquel.
So after Diamond, we didn't have a high school, so I went to a private school in Memphis called Hutchinson. And then after Hutchinson, I came to DC. I went to American University, and right after American University, I worked at the KIPP Foundation on Naomi's team now, and I worked in the same office as Nathan, the office that you're sitting in. I miss it a lot. I miss the team. I miss DC. But similar to Nathan, I like to say we're almost the same person. But my experience in education, like having to bounce around to different places to be able to get a good education, made me want to work in education. It's just something that I also am tired of babies having to do. I'm tired of those decisions being made at such a young age. And I feel like if I could offer, I don't know, a small piece to the world, that's what I want to do. So that's why I'm here. After working at the KIPP Foundation on the government affairs team, I went and worked for Teach for America in Los Angeles. And then after Los Angeles, I came to work for Next 100 in New York. So besides the fact that I'm hitting all the major cities in the country for whatever reason, at Next 100, I am a policy entrepreneur. So my job is to take the issues that I see are the most important for my community and to try to figure out how we can like create innovative policy solutions for them, and specifically like amplify the next generation of policy leaders. So that's what I'm doing now. And one of my big projects at Next 100 right now is actually doing a nationwide survey of charter school alumni. So I'm trying to figure out in real time, like why all of us care so much about the same things. And I'm learning that it has to do with the fact that like at a really young age, we went through a lot and we were already sacrificing a lot to get a great education. So that's why I'm here. I feel like that's why most of us are here. Yeah.
So you skipped over a really important part of your journey here in DC. And I hope you know what I'm going to ask you to talk about. One of the things that I learned about you, I had the opportunity to kind of be engaged with KIPP prior to coming over to the team. I worked for UNCF, the United Negro College Fund, for 6.5 years before joining KIPP. And working with the team, or helping to build the team that focused on K-12 education. We had a really robust and continue to have a really robust set of data and research around the African American community's perceptions of education and education reform, and thinking about civil rights organizations and their role to play in the education space. There's some work that you did here in DC that kind of preceded you, and I heard about you and then had the opportunity to go to KSS, KIPP School Summit, with Dr. Michael Lomax, who serves as a member of the KIPP Foundation board. And one of the biggest challenges that we saw in doing the K-12 work was there was a lack of connection to a lot of the civil rights organizations. And so in the work that I was doing, it was how do we engage organizations like NAACP, like Urban League, our partner organizations, to really be thoughtful about, shifting the conversation on how to improve outcomes for Black and Brown families. Now, someone posed this question, and I think it is important, but I'd also love for you to spend a little time, Raquel, talking about your work here in DC and what you did with a civil rights organization. Someone's asked in the comments, should we be making quote unquote sacrifices for the education of our children? Should it be that hard? High quality education should be easy to access. And we all know, right, by virtue of our experiences, that we believe that to be the case, but in so many places it is not. DC is like made leaps and bounds, but it's not perfect. I also serve as a member of the DC Public Charter School Board, where we are the authorizer, the sole independent authorizer for charter schools here in the district. But when I think of that, I think of not only how do we do that in a thoughtful and data-driven, but also community-informed way. I also think about the other organizations here in the district that have, touch points to different schools, and how do we engage them to be thoughtful about our work. So Raquel, if you could tell us a little bit about what you did here with the NAACP, since you skipped over that.
Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to skip over it. So yeah, there were a few things that we did on government affairs. There was federal advocacy, there was local advocacy, which was parents and alumni and students. And then there was civil rights work. I've been a part of the NAACP since I was a baby. That was not an option for me. And when I was at American University, I started our university's NAACP chapter. And so that just wasn't something that I was going to let go. I felt like in any way that I could, I wanted to make sure that I was a part of the community. And I want to go back and address the comment that we shouldn't have to make sacrifices in order to get a good education. That's honestly, we should not have to do half of the stuff that we have to do in order just to live life. I'm talking specifically for my community. It's absolutely ridiculous, some of the things that we have to go through in order just to breathe. But education being number one is I don't know, that's always going to be my priority. So I am 100% with you on that. I personally feel like in order for us to serve all of our communities effectively, partnership is necessary. So when I did work on the government affairs team and doing civil rights work, my role as an executive committee member of the DC NAACP and at the KIPP Foundation, in my opinion, it was the same thing. Because at the end of the day, I felt like I'm working for Black kids. And if I'm doing one from 9 to 5 and I'm doing the other from 5 to 9, that's that on that. But at the end of the day, like both organizations did the same thing, in my opinion, and that was fight for Black children. The tension that existed between what was like the charter world and like civil rights organization, kids don't know about that. Like kids do, 5-year-olds don't care. Like 7-year-olds do not care. They don't know it exists. That's not my business. That was my motto every day. If I could go to work every day and I could advocate for babies and then leave work and head back to the DC NAACP office and still fight for babies. I think that work was critical. NAACP is where I spent a lot of my time, but I also like tried really hard to like create and like cultivate ties with the Urban League and Unidos US now, which was formerly when I was at KIPP and CLR. I just felt like none of our work existed in silos, and I still feel that way. I don't think that we should be doing any of this work without each other, because as someone said, like we have to make ridiculous sacrifices, and not only is it unfair, but we should not be doing it alone. This is all of our community, and I feel like all of our community together. So yeah, no, I prioritize civil rights organizations and partnerships, specifically in education, because like, I don't know, I can say this like I'm blue in the face, but like Black kids don't care. They do not care about tension. They do not care about problems. They need a good education. They need to be able to walk outside and feel safe. And I feel like in order to get my work done in the education policy space, I'm gonna have to get work done in the racial equity space. There is no difference to me. That's why I prioritize like civil rights work with education. I was gonna say, I see you nodding.
I wanted to give Raquel a little praise, well, a lot of praise too, because she co-leads a book club that my partner and I are a part of, and we've done a lot of reading together, and she's cultivated a virtual community, and so I really applaud her work, and very thankful we connected during the summit last year. This time last year, we were all hanging out by the pool in Houston. Now we're behind screens.
I pulled that picture up the other day, and that pool that was in the shape of Texas, I mean, I miss it, and had that floating river around it, kind of like what y'all do in Austin and other parts of the state. Really enjoyed that, and miss being in community with all of you all. It's really difficult to do the work that I do without being in people's, like being around people. That is a part of the work. We know that there are black and white things in terms of like that are data driven, that are metrics driven, but having being in relationship with people is something that, you know, you can do that over Zoom, you can do that over the phone, but it means so much more to really build that trust in person. And so trying to do that in this virtual space has been a challenge. I miss walking over to say hi to the team over at DC.
I miss it too.
I know, where like we would be able to have conversation about, I could really get a pulse on what's going on in the community by, walking over and having a conversation. So, different when you have to do that over the phone. And so if Nathan, did you want to add anything here in terms of your work or anything else that you may have like slipped and not told us? If not, I can move on to the next question.
Well, just quickly, Raquel is one of my heroes. When I heard her give that speech at KSS a couple of years ago, I'm like, she's one of my heroes. That's all I want to say. But yeah, that speech was powerful.
I won't accept that because I'm literally sitting and talking to 3 people that I look up to right now. I'm not accepting any of this. Like, y'all are my heroes.
Well, I'm glad we're having this paddle cheer fest amongst ourselves, because we're going to dig deep. I want to make sure that we know that this is not just a pep rally for us to talk about how great we all are, but to dig deep into some of the work that's happening and that you all are actually leading on and doing every day. There are things that happen, the ebbs and flows of life just can, dramatically shift how things, how you feel about the work that you do. And prior to joining not just KIPP, but UNCF, I worked for Washington, D.C.'s mayor. I worked for the city. So Mayor Adrian Fenty, who was mayor between 2000, he was elected in 2006 and lost his bid for reelection in 2010. So I was a part of the team that helped to turn the lights on and turn the lights off for that administration. And in that time, really, and how I really started to wrap my brain around education was we had our takeover, the mayoral takeover. And so, like most cities, we had an elected school board, and the power within what happened with the superintendent lied directly with the school board. They would hire and fire the superintendent. Fenty came in and said that DC is small enough and that he feels wants to have the accountability of being the sole decision maker in terms of what happens here. And, there are conversations that are floating now that, again, for color and context, if you look at how we ended up in that place, you would understand. But if you just come into this space now, it doesn't really make sense the way things are set up. We had who knows how many superintendents in, a short period of time. He came in, took over the schools, and I just use that term, take over, but he was really thoughtful about how do we restructure this in a way that it works. So he named a chancellor. The chancellor then had carte blanche to really be thoughtful about how we need to restructure to have better outcomes. Now, simultaneously, at that point, about 15 years, we had our charter system building, growing, shifting, changing. And because I'm a part of that process now, I have a different lens. And so I think about all the pieces of the work that were happening, but also all the policy that goes into all the changes and shifts and, the thoughtfulness and looking at best practices in other places and then replicating those things or building out a new structure. So, our charter schools here are, we rate them, I guess is the best way to say, but we evaluate them on something we call the performance management framework. And it's a set of now I have a different lens that we have to think about different levers that were happening. I heard myself talking. So sorry about that technical difficulties, but how do we think about all the policy, all the work, all the frameworks that go into what happens in the education space? That's something that a lot of us are thinking about every day. But what are some of the issues? What are some of the things that are happening in each of your communities or that you're seeing happening in different communities? When I was at UNCF, it was really interesting to see that there were things that were happening in New Orleans that were very similar to things that were happening in Indianapolis. But the people in both of those cities thought that was something that was only happening to them. So what are some of the policies? What are some of the things that you all are seeing that, Raquel, you've lived in multiple cities. What are the things that you would like to see organizations, those who are melanated and civil rights-based organizations, but for white-led organizations, what are some of the things you would like to see them focus on, or just issues that you see that you're working on to address?
You want me to start?
Yeah, sure.
The thing that I'm working on in Next 100, and I feel like the thing that frustrates me the most, is our lack of investment in low income and specifically Black students to get higher education or to transition into like career after high school. So at Next 100, my big project is titled Innovating the College Counseling Model. And it's actually modeled after our KIPP College program. But I think we could be doing a much better job in investing in our kids while they're kids and transition into life. I think we're doing absolutely bad at that. And unfortunately, COVID just like exacerbated that. It made it 10 times worse. I think something like a global pandemic happening while we were literally already not investing in our kids made it 20 times worse for our community to be able to get ahead. And I'm not looking forward to what the numbers are going to look like in 2021 and 2022, considering the fact that we already were not investing in resources for marginalized kids to either go into higher education or go into a sustainable career. I think we could just be doing a much better job of focusing on that. White-led organizations in general speak a lot about how they want to diversify staff, but I feel like there needs to be more investment in the wages of babies to help them figure out what to do after high school. I also think, in general, I am very frustrated with the country's handling of undocumented students, and I think COVID that also increased my frustration with that. I don't want to take too much time, but those two are like the most important for me. I think we need to invest more in post-secondary opportunities. I also think we need to start just investing in general in our undocumented students. Just like the amount of attention both of those issues does not get frustrates me a lot.
Yep. So before you all, because I'm looking at the time and I want to make sure that we get some time to really like dig into this. Work hard, be nice. Work hard, be nice is, I won't say it's kept me up at night, but it's definitely been a frustration during the day. And I've had a glass of wine or three, having to like, just like move through that, because one, and everybody who knows me knows that I don't mince words. I don't cut hard. Like I'm not going to sugarcoat this at all. But to have, this organization was really created out of two men who decided they were going to do Teach for America. They did Teach for America, and they encountered a really interesting and really thoughtful educator. And so we all know that story. We could go down that rabbit hole, but we won't. We're going to talk about where we are in 2020. So a few years ago, KIPP, started to hear that some of the regions, which if people are not familiar with KIPP, we kind of function like a franchise where the foundation is the leadership development arm of the individual regions across the country. So we now have KIPP. All the schools that make up KIPP Texas used to be individual regions based on the cities they were in. And so with all of the schools and all of the regions, we started to hear the groundswell locally that there were some schools that had decided to drop the motto. And they were, either just from branding wise, they were not using it on a day-to-day basis. And there were different reasons for that. And so over time, it made sense for us to really get a feel for, when I say us, the foundation, to get a feel for what was happening. And so they gathered 6,000 or so students, alumni, teachers, staff, and to really shift and think about what the mission and vision of KIPP should be going forward. And so that mission statement is, I think the anchor of that is together with families and communities, and that thinking through that. And if you want to check that out, you should visit kipp.org. Thinking through that, we also heard from families and alums and some of the staff that the motto, work hard, be nice, which, on its face value makes sense, right? I don't see why you would think it doesn't. In the office where KIPP Foundation shares office space with KIPP DC, they are on one side, we're on the other. Behind my desk where I sit, and the day that I started at KIPP, I took a picture because it says work hard, be nice. We know that slogan is there. So they decided we're going to retire the slogan. I think the way that we went about it, and it feels like we did this in the wake of all that is happening in the racial reckoning of today. But it's not. It's something that has been discussed over time. And so we really thought about how do we shift gears and think about that in a different way. And so the alums of some of our schools were saying that that's not enough. Work hard and be nice is not enough. We can do that. We can believe that to be true, but say, like, having that just be the foundation of what we do, or like the guiding principles of what we do, we know that in our communities that's not enough. And so over the last few weeks, we've seen one too many, unfortunately, people that are not really involved in the communities that we serve. So several white men have written these think pieces about our slogan. That wokeness is like undermining the values of KIPP. And so I would love to hear and I know that we all have varying opinions, or we're on the spectrum of this. We all see this differently. Nathan, you wrote a piece as a retort to what was percolating on the internet, and how these white men were running off at the mouth talking about work hard, be nice. Y'all are being, if you're dropping that, you're saying that everybody should be mean and lazy. And so, Nathan, can you kick us off to talk about that a little more?
Yeah, I just want to start. Before I start that, I want to shout out Harriet Ball, the third founder of KIPP. So shout out to her. I think it's important for us to uplift the name of the woman who was the architect of this, right? A Black woman. But yeah, to your point, Naomi, this work has been done for years. Myself, Dolores, and Raquel, and so many other alums have been a part of this work, have been part of these conversations of how to make it a more anti-racist organization. But yeah, I was on Twitter, and I was reading these articles by white men, some editorials by white men, and it left out the voices of the people who have been doing this work for so long, the people who have been the people who are mostly impacted by our school. We're talking about our families, our students, our community, and alums, right? So I was annoyed, right? Because they could have easily reached out to any of us to say, why is this changed? Why does this need to be changed? So I got the opportunity to write my retort. And my biggest thing is, it's just like a fake outrage, right? It was kind of weird to me. Like, does this mean that KIPP doesn't believe that kids should work hard anymore? Trust and believe. It's very like our students and our teachers and our families know how to work hard. They don't need to be told to be nice. What's important is that they're getting the best decision that they deserve. I mean, the best education they deserve in our schools, and they're loved in our schools. So yeah, I mean, nothing's changed. Our mission is still the same. But I think it's important to talk about the work that needs to be done in order to make this organization work for all of our students, in order to make this organization better for all of our students. And I'm proud of the work that we've been doing. We've been doing this for years. We haven't just started the social justice work. We haven't just started DEI. We're working every day, mostly in KIPP DC, but also across the states, to do this work and have the people who are the most impacted by our work a part of the conversations. Even with changing our mission statement, that was alumni, student, parent led, and it took months to get that done. So salute to all the people who have been working and continue to work to make this organization a better place. But yeah, it was just fake outrage to me. You really don't care. You really don't care about our schools, and if you really cared, you would ask us, you would talk to us about how we feel about this change and why we think this change is important. But the fact our schools are still doing the work and educating our kids with the highest standards every single day. Our teachers know what we're supposed to do when we come in the classroom.
Dolores, what about you? What are your thoughts?
First, can I nicely say to those white men that they can be excused, because these aren't their kids, these are our kids. So we don't have to meet their ideas or what their standards are. I think what I do appreciate now is that KIPP has given more opportunity for alumni to have a voice, and also for current students. And I think once we start listening to our parents, to our students, to our alumni, then we will get ahead of these issues. For example, for the work hard, be nice slogan. The more that the better representation that we have, we will be able to get ahead.
Yep. And what are your thoughts, Raquel?
My frustration in this, and I feel like in this work in general in so many spaces, I am personally just like really tired of people who have never walked a New York block in my shoes telling me how to feel about anything that I have to go through. I'm tired of it. I'm with Nathan. I think it's exhausting, and you do not care. You do not care. Whether that's someone telling me that I should work hard and be nice, or whether that's someone telling me that I shouldn't, and if I don't do it, then I'm not good enough. I'm just like really tired of like people who have never had to even make an ounce of the sacrifice that my community has had to make, telling me how I should feel about my life. And I think specifically on the work hard, be nice issue, there is a ton of fake outrage. A ton of people giving these pieces and giving their opinions who have never had to even think about choosing a different school that is not their neighborhood school, or had to think about like what an adequate education doesn't look like at all. So yeah, I also thought there was a lot of fake outrage. And I also sit in the seat that I thought that the announcement was fake systemic change. I think the slogan not representing what the world looks like right now is fair. And if we want to change it, I think that's fair. But I'm not a fan of performative activism. I just wrote a really long piece on that, and I did not think it was appropriate, especially right now, but ever, to talk about this change happening as if it is something that is going to have a systemic impact on our babies. I think telling kids something that's really important, something that's going to stick in their head for the rest of their lives, is it's extremely meaningful, and I think it's really important. But I think we need to think long and hard about the way that we talk about the things that we are doing for kids. I just think we can do more. I sit on the side of like this is not a step for me. I want systemic change. I want Black alumni and Brown leaders. I want our board to change. I want things to actually change. And I think listening to us we have for the past decade with the slogan is a great half step. But I want step one and I want step two. And on all ends of this, I'm frustrated. I'm frustrated with naysayers, and I'm frustrated with people who are acting like this is the end all be all.
Right.
End all be all.
That's right. And so before we, I want to make sure that I call attention to some of the things that KIPP is actively doing, and the push that we have seen from alums, and why we, a lot of these things were already percolating. I hate that it appears that KIPP is meeting the moment versus we were already doing work behind the scenes prior to any of the things that have happened in 2020. Prior to the deaths of Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, before all of those things, we were already thinking about this. And instead of being able to roll these things out in the way that we were being thoughtful and how we had planned to, we kind of met the moment. But one of the quotes that came from the research that we did in talking to families, this really landed with me in a way where I was like, okay, this makes sense to me. Asking us to be nice puts the onus on kids to be quiet, to be compliant, to be controlled. It isn't actively challenging us to disrupt the systems that are trying to control us. And when you hear that, and you know that if you are 7, 8 years old and you're hearing this, but you're doing those particular things, you're being nice, you're working hard. And as you go through your life, so now you're a young adult, that doesn't always help you win.
Mm-hmm.
And so how is it that I'm taking the formula that these white people have told me that I need to use to be able to, to thrive, and I still don't see those outcomes? And so how do we now shift that to mean something more than what those simple words, while they seem simple, and then people saying us removing those words is going to shatter the foundation of KIPP. When you hear that, when you hear an outcome like that from someone who has gone through the program, gone through these schools, that means something. We can't, and I hate this phrase because it is completely inaccurate and is racist, but the bootstrap idea. We can't continue to lift as we climb if how you're telling us we should go about doing it still doesn't work. And we know that just being nice, I'm sure Breonna Taylor was nice and she worked really hard. I did a whole Twitter thread about this. Why are we having these conversations if you're not in those neighborhoods every day, if you're not working and doing the work every day, if you're not living that life? Please step aside and be quiet so we can get to the business of what we need to do. DC, we just approved several schools, some of them founded by Black and Brown leaders. One of them it's a middle school called the Social Justice School. It's clear, this is our mission. We're going to do all the academic work, but our goal is to make sure that we are building people who understand social justice. And so if, the idea of some random white men going along, writing these think pieces, there's work that still has to happen, right? And so KIPP has developed 6 equity commitments. I'm not going to list all 6. This is work that is happening internally, and we will pivot that externally when necessary, right? Because we don't need people trying to pick apart what it is that we want to work on. But my team is working with other teams to unpack and really do a deep dive into what is happening in 2 of those streams. One of them being the discipline practices of KIPP. One of the things that I've heard over time has been some of the practices which we announced during KSS last year that we're going to evolve from that. The bench and some of the other things that were happening are ways that white people have been able to control Black bodies, Black and brown bodies, and have not helped in the character development of students, right? So we're going to look at some of those practices and make sure that we're being thoughtful across the network. One that our team is specifically working on is how do we think about and how do families feel about police in schools, right? We know that having discipline practices and police in school can create and uphold the school to prison pipeline. And so we want to make sure we're being thoughtful and having really, really robust information to make a decision around for the schools that have police and SROs in their buildings. What is the purpose, and if we need to continue to have them? And we have a theory, but we want to be able to do the research to make sure that makes sense. And so those are 2 of the equity commitments that we've made. Again, like I said, I'm not going to dive into all of them. I don't need people trying to pick it apart, because people love to want to write think pieces and have it show off on Twitter and all the extra stuff, right?
It's Twitter for me.
Right. And it's hard when you're trying to do your work and you're constantly, it's almost like you're in the arena, right? And you have people in the stands trying to throw, like, if you're not doing this with us, if you're sitting in your office or in your home office with all your cushy things, and there are people still out here trying to make it, don't worry about it. Minding your business is free. Minding your business is free, right? So no, are we too woke? No. And I hate the fact that people are walking around using the word and not knowing what it means. And we don't really say that anymore. But, so I would love to just hear from you all, what are the things that you want to see KIPP, but other organizations do going forward? Raquel wrote a really great piece about performative shifts versus like really anti-racist focused work. And I'd love for you to kick off from that standpoint. Raquel, if you could tell us, like, what is performative versus like really doing the work? And if you all could tell me what you'd like to see organizations do.
I think performative activism is, I have no better way to explain it except it's what's happening right now. After George Floyd was murdered, everyone had something to say. Everyone had to do something. It was like there wasn't a single Instagram, Twitter company that didn't put something out. And it was almost like the priority was just making sure that you said something and you did something versus actually create systemic change, like in the background. It is performative when it has like almost no impact on Black and brown, on marginalized people in general in the long term. I feel like we keep doing this in all movements where something happens and then everyone has to do something really shallow. And there's like a bunch of things that people have been asking for that continue to get ignored. And I love KIPP with my whole heart, which means I also think it's my responsibility to hold us accountable and to make sure that like we are creating a community that is like inclusive of everybody. And I feel like right now I'm not seeing what I want to see as an alum of the network, as someone who, like there's an infinite amount of love that I have for KIPP. And I feel like because of that, I'm allowed to say I want to see more. We've been asking for shifts in leadership. We've been asking for more alumni representation. We've been asking for like amplification that isn't tokenism for so long, so long. And I feel like what we're getting now is still performances. And I'm I'm putting my foot down. Like, I want that to change. I want us to think about what we're putting out and whether or not it's actually going to lead to systemic change, something we can look back at 10 years and say that day created this, versus like a post or like, you know, something that just looks good right now. And I worry that not only KIPP is just like, that's just my home, that's my family, but I worry that like white-led organizations in general are going to continue to do that, and history is just going to continue to repeat itself. And I refuse. I personally just refuse.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do y'all want to chime in on anything there? Or what would you like to see organizations do?
It's so essential to hire more Black and brown leaders. Without hard work is essential and character matters, but that's not enough. We need butts and seats to actually make the systemic changes that we want to see. Systemic change comes inside of it, happens hand in hand inside of an organization as it does outside. So if we do not have enough leaders that look like us, then how do we really expect change to actually happen? I can just speak. So just being a new board member and kind of taking a look at the board and just understanding, wow, this is what everything looked like before I got here. No wonder these decisions were being made, because no one could really speak to my experiences. So it's so important for all organizations to really start hiring Black and brown leaders. That's the only way that we can diversify.
For me, it's not enough just to hire Black and brown kids, right? And I'm going to speak specifically about KIPP, right? If our motto is to make generational change, transformative change in the lives of marginalized people, how are we really supporting their not only academic growth, but their leadership development as well? So if we're hiring alums, if we're hiring Black and brown people, what is their pathway to leadership look like, right? How are you perpetuating inequities in your organization by how you hire or how you don't recruit or how you don't promote and develop your Black and brown talent? So that's one of my things. That's a charge, not only for white-led organizations, but KIPP specifically, right?
That's right.
I'm blessed to be in my position right now in a senior level. But there's so many alums who come back and work for our organization who are, put into these really low level, in my opinion, really low level jobs, and they have no support. Right, they have no leadership development. So that's my charge. It's not enough just to hire us. We are talented. We do the work every single day.
Every day.
How are you promoting our development, our leadership development? How are you supporting that?
I'm saying I was thinking that.
That's right.
Yep. I'm with
Of
you.
course you do, Raquel.
Go ahead.
I was just going to also just say, bring back the community feel. I feel like the team and family it doesn't feel like a family anymore. From the bottom line where teachers and students have that bond. Like, I still go and grab a beer with my 5th grade math teacher when I'm in Austin. And that community is so important I know it's important to me, and I'm sure it's important to our students, and bringing back that feel that our administration and our teachers are really there for our students is very, very important.
Right. And I think it's really important. Raquel, what are you going to say? I want to cut you off.
No, sorry.
Oh, no. Okay. So I think it's important that we, like you all have summed it up. This slogan is really a symbol, right? And we know that by the reaction of these white men who have written these pieces, like, symbolism matters to them, but we all know that between the team and family that is KIPP, that slogan will always be a part of the history of KIPP, but it's not the end all be all. We have to really reflect on what we've learned, what we've heard from our alums and parents, family, staff, and what is it that we're committed to doing going forward. And that's really what matters. That's really where you get into the work. And so, yes, it's a slogan, but yes, we also don't want to just have slogans. We want to see the work happen. We want to dismantle the things that are keeping the children that we serve from being able to actualize what it is they want to do with their lives. And so that happens on the timelines are, thrown off, and all these things are shifting because of all that 2020 has done us. 2020 has painted us all in a corner. But how are we walking our way out of that in a thoughtful way? And so we have 1 minute left. Does anybody have any final thoughts, a charge, a call to action?
Just like a quick note to work hard, be nice. It is just a slogan, but it also manifests itself in some of the super punitive and racist practices that historically plague KIPP, right? So I think it's important for us to note that, along with no shortcuts, no excuses, right? It's not let's be clear, alums and parents and teachers aren't just saying we are good on this slogan just because it's a slogan. No, it manifests itself in how we treat our kids and also how we treat our parents as well. So that's why it needs to change, right? Not just the slogan, but to Raquel's point, right? Some systemic changes, because that no shortcuts, no excuses, work hard, be nice, that's part of the culture. So we have to get rid of that. To Raquel's point, once again, it's just a slogan, but the impact of the slogan is what we really need to be doing. So that's the charge, right? I know we're doing it. I know we started the conversation and we're working on DEI and we're doing it, and we've been doing it for a long time. But the charge is, make sure you take these practices out of our classrooms, because our kids deserve better. They deserve much better than that.
And you know that because you were one of them.
And I love KIPP with my heart, but
you have to be critical of the things that you love, right?
Absolutely.
Be able to take the good with the bad, but also ask for and demand, not just ask, demand to see the changes that they're capable of making to have better outcomes. So
can I do one last thing? Yeah. Just outside of the classroom, hard work is essential and character matters. But for a lot of us, we've been told to work hard and be nice, but there isn't enough positions in the real world. A lot of us are the only Mexican in the room, the only Black person in the room, the only Asian in the room. So unless these companies start opening seats up for more people that look like us, then that would work. 'Cause I've only seen the work hard, be nice work for the white man. I haven't really seen it work it hasn't worked for myself. And I think, all of us are accomplished, and we can all speak to those stories of we were qualified, but because we were brown, we didn't get the job.
Well, on that note, thank you all for being so committed to not only the work hard and be nice for yourselves, but doing that work going forward. I think, as we look at what is happening, one, how do we disrupt? How do we stop this, the performative versions of change that we are seeing, not only with KIPP, but with other organizations? And how do we push for those things? And so if we're going to demand change, that isn't always nice. We're not always going to have the niceties. We're going to be respectful in how we do our work, but being sweet and docile about that is something that we're not going to do. So as the day after James Baldwin's birthday, I hope that we're all going to think about doing our work in a meaningful way, in a way that shows and demands, we're committed to doing our part. What are you going to do to meet us where we are, so that we can all see this country improve and move forward the way that it can and it should? Trust Black women. Everything y'all love about anything that's great in this country is built off the backs of Black and brown people. So with that, thank you all. I appreciate you. I love you. For the alums that I didn't get to have on here, we can find another way to have another robust conversation. And everybody have a great and productive week.
Naomi for VP. I heard decisions coming soon. Thank you, Naomi.
Thank you.
Thank you.